Joining me is, while Kanu Sarda continues to be with us, our legal editor Nalini Sharma also joins in. Nalini, do help us understand this. When the CGI said in very clear terms that the plea is dismissed, full stop, the SBI needs to disclose at the earliest in 24-hour business hours. It's very interesting because if the SBI has said June 30th is their deadline, they cannot furnish it before that. Now to call out all that data in about 24 hours, it will be quite a task. But what is the reason that the court has given that it must be done right away?
So, Pooja, just to bring some clarity to exactly what has happened before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, in categorical words, told the State Bank of India that all of the data that they'd asked for in their judgment is already available with the SBI, because essentially what the Supreme Court had asked for was two things. Number one, who all have purchased the electoral bonds from the State Bank of India, which individuals or which organizations have purchased these electoral bonds, and number two, how many electoral bonds have been encashed by the political parties. So all of these two aspects, the details, two separate sets of data and details will be submitted by the State Bank of India by tomorrow. Why the SBI was asking for more time is because they said that they need time in matching one set of these details with the other, essentially to determine who has donated to which political party and how much amount. That matching is something that the Supreme Court has said is not required to be done by the SBI at all, because that is not something that the Supreme Court had asked for in the first place. They had only asked for who has purchased it and how much money has been encashed by these political parties. Now, it completely depends on the kind of data that SBI puts out by tomorrow, which is finally published by the Election Commission of India by the 15th of March. But it remains to be seen as to whether or not any connection can be made to determine which individual or which organization has donated to which political party. Now, Pooja, let's remember it's a very short window during which these electoral bonds can be issued, and even after they are issued by the SBI, there's only a 15-day window for the political party to even encash these electoral bonds. So keeping that in mind, it might be difficult to actually correlate which political party has got the donation from which particular individual or which entity.
But Nalini, can I ask you to explain this further, because you know what you're explaining is very technical but very important as well. So you are saying that we may not know specifically who has donated to which political party. What we may know after 24 hours is who bought the electoral bond and possibly how much did a political party encash it. Can you help us understand the difference in this?
Exactly. So what we are going to know is which individuals and which companies have purchased the electoral bonds from the State Bank of India, and at the same time we are going to get to know how many political parties have encashed what value of bonds. But what we are not going to get to know from tomorrow's data, Pooja, and it's important to put this into context, is that which individual has donated to which political party, because person X who's bought an electoral bond has a freedom of choice to donate it to whichever political party he may or she want, and the political party has 15 days time to encash this electoral bond. Now, keeping in mind that there is only a small window during which the electoral bonds are issued, almost I think 10 days during which electoral bonds are issued, and all of those bonds will be encashed in the 15 days following the date of issuance, it's going to be very difficult to match the data of who has donated to which political party, but that only remains to be seen depending on the kind of data that SBI gives out, because each electoral bond will have a unique number that will be assigned to it. Now, if those unique numbers are put out in the data by the SBI, and at the same time we're able to determine as to whether or not a political party has encashed a bond pertaining to that unique identity number, then it remains to be seen as to whether or not we can make that connection, but we cannot speculate upon that as of now, because the Supreme Court categorically said that two separate sets of data will be put out by the SBI. Number one, on which individual has purchased the bond, and two, on what amount of bonds have been encashed by the political parties. There needs to be no matching done between the two sets of data, at least by the SBI. It remains to be seen exactly
Nalini,
what happens
that's what
once the
even the State Bank of India said, isn't it? That it will be difficult to match the data right away. They need time for it, to which the CGI said the plea is dismissed, needs to submit right away. But, you know, how do you see this, considering that because it reached the court, electoral bonds had been controversial from day one? What happens here on? Does it put an end completely to electoral bond process? Do you think, are there any sort of appeals going here on? Because for now, to end it right away, do the political parties have some time to encash what had been bought or what had been donated earlier, or that also has been stopped? Would you be able to give any details on that?
Well, Pooja, on the judgment that was delivered on the 15th of Feb, the Supreme Court had categorically said that all of the electoral bonds need to be, the issuance need to be stopped immediately on an immediate basis. So no electoral bonds have been issued after the 15th of February. But at the same time, the Supreme Court had also in the judgment said that any electoral bonds that have still not been encashed by the political parties, that means any unencashed electoral bonds that were lying with the political parties by the 15th of February also should be returned back to the owner. So those are the only electoral bonds that have not been encashed by the parties. And since no new bonds have been issued after that, there's no question of any further bonds being issued to any political parties. So keeping that in mind, the data is only going to be from the 12th of April 2019, which is the day when the Supreme Court had given its interim order, till the 15th of Feb 2024, which is the day when the final order has been determined. Now, as to whether or not there can be any further proceedings pertaining to this, of course, once the data is released by the SBI tomorrow, by the end of the day, and when it's finally published by the Election Commission by the 15th of March, I'm sure that the petitioners, along with other lot of organizations, are going to go through the data in detail as to determine as to whether or not all of the data has been put out by the SBI in the public domain in accordance with the Supreme Court order that was given on the 15th of February. But all of that is in the speculative domain right now, so we are not going to get into it. What we know so far is that the SBI will be putting out 2 separate sets of data by the end of the day tomorrow. The Election Commission will be publishing all the details on their website by the 15th of March, and that's when we are going to know who are these individuals whose identity was initially supposed to be protected according to the electoral bond scheme, but it's finally going to be revealed who are these individuals who've bought these electoral bonds, and to what extent, to what amount have these electoral bonds been purchased by these individuals, and also as to whether or not there are any foreign organizations who have a stake in India who've purchased these electoral bonds, and if so, as to whether or not those have been encashed by the political parties.
Possibly, what you're telling us, Nalini, is those who possibly were waiting with a bated breath to find out who donated how much to a party, there may not be a clarity on that. It will be more about who bought it, how much the parties in cash. Of course, we'll see as and when the ECI also eventually receives all the details by the 15th of March. But for now, 24 hours for the SBI to submit all as per court order.